Coming to paperback and e-readers, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this all-new Esteem series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in digital format at Amazon.com, Google Play, Draft2Digital, and other digital booksellers, or pick up your paperback copy on May 24th. Living with your boyfriend or your girlfriend is like putting a relationship on layaway. I came to that observation as I was putting fingers to the keyboard to write my new novel, Spinsterella, Goth Girl Summer, and as I was writing a chapter where Matilda is going to meet her boyfriend, who just got a big promotion to a six-figure job, he proposes to Matilda that as they move to another city, that they live together. And Matilda retorts that living with him would be like putting a relationship on layaway, and the whole concept of putting the relationship on layaway is basically because the person who makes this proposal wants to go out here and buy time. Now, the whole concept of layaway was something that came out of the late 1960s and 1970s when the U.S. economy was starting to be in some really bad shape, and layaway allowed people who were not really having the money ready to be able to purchase whatever they wanted to go out here and buy that item on time. Now, what the person would do on layaway would do is put a down payment on an item, and the store would hold that item for the time, and as the person continued to make payments on the item, what they would do is eventually they would finally make all the payments and then finally be able to purchase the item. And this whole concept applied to relationships at the time of the late 1960s and 1970s, because what a lot of women who were indoctrinated into feminism, and a lot of these guys who were cads and womanizers who rose up to the higher levels in the social marketplace because fathers were taken out of the entire vetting process for relationships, what these feminist indoctrinated women and these womanizers and cads would do is they would go out here and come up with this proposal of living together in an effort to try to avoid marriage, because a lot of those baby boomer daughters, they were really traumatized by seeing their mothers and fathers not really having a good, happy relationship. And a lot of the womanizers and cads really didn't want to make a commitment. So what they did was go out and make a compromise where instead of looking to get married, they decided to move in with each other and decided to live together. Now, as they looked to live together, what they did was put their relationships on layaway, and they put them on layaway, creating a covert contract with each other, where they said what they wanted to do is see how things went before they decided to get married. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, both of the partners wound up becoming deeply disappointed with each other as they decided to live together. Because what would happen in a lot of cases is because both partners feared making a commitment, they never decided to get married, and as they decided not to get married, they would wind up living with each other and ironically winding up just as miserable as the people who were married. Now, what's really interesting here about the folks who live together as they're putting their relationships on layaway is what they do is the exact same thing that a lot of people did when they put items on layaway. What they would do is put the down payment on the item, and after they put the down payment on the item, the store would hold the item, but over time, some of these people wouldn't pay for the item in full, and what would happen is the store would be stuck with old merchandise that would be sitting in the back of the store, depreciating in value, and eventually, if the person didn't pay within a reasonable time, what would happen is the store would wind up with a big piece of shrink. And the same thing happens with people who get into relationships where they live together. What happens is that they're winding up losing time because they're with an individual who is not really interested in making a full commitment. And because they're not interested in making a full commitment, what a person is losing is one of the greatest intangibles, and that intangible is time out of their life. And the time that person is losing out of their life, spending with this individual, is time that they could have had in a marriage and time they could have taken to build in a marriage, but they're not really able to build in that marriage because what they're doing is buying time, hoping, wishing, and praying that their partner will finally make a decision to commit to them. Unfortunately, what happened to many men and women in the late 1960s and onward is as they lived together, what happened is that they wound up never really making a commitment. And a lot of these women basically wound up having kids for this guy, wound up having a family with this guy, but the guy was never really married to her. So instead of making the deal legitimate by marrying this woman, what this woman did was wind up in a situation where she had his kids, he was in the home or out of the home, depending on what this guy wanted to do. And eventually what happened in many of these living together situations is that this guy, or even sometimes the woman, what they would do is see another person and decide that they wanted to end their relationship with that person who lived with them. And as they decided to move out and move on, one of the partners, whether it be the man or woman, what would happen to them is that they would be stuck with a life where everything was basically depreciated, and they would wind up stuck with a life where they basically lost a lot of time, similar to the item that the guy half paid for and left in the store, and they were left with their whole life basically shrunk because they now were not in their prime years anymore, and now they've got to go back on the social marketplace at a depreciated value of possibly 50, 60, 70, even 80% off the original social marketplace price. And that all could have really been avoided had that person understood that a living together situation was basically like, again, putting a relationship on layaway. And sadly, when you put something on layaway and they don't pay for it, you're the one who winds up taking the loss at the end of the day. And you wind up taking the loss at the end of the day because you're dealing with a person who basically isn't ready to make a full commitment. And they're not ready to make a full commitment because this person basically, in some cases, just is a coward. Now, when it comes to the whole person who proposes the idea of living together, in my opinion, they're basically cowards and, again, scared to make a full commitment in a relationship to a person because what they're afraid of is that they're not going to be able to see a better option, and what they want to do is keep the door open so that they can have a better option in someone else. And that in and of itself is disrespectful to both a man or a woman, because what this person is doing is saying that they're not fully committed to you. And if they're not fully committed to you, then you shouldn't waste your time with that person. Because the whole idea of dating and having a relationship, the ultimate goal of dating and relationships is to go out here and see if a person is viable to be a wife or a husband. That is the ultimate goal of courtship. The ultimate goal of courtship was to see if a person was fit to be your husband or fit to be your wife. And that's why we had those vetting processes in place before the age of the feminist movement and the sexual revolution. Because over the course of the feminist movement and the sexual revolution, what men and women wanted to do was go out here and change the paradigm for relationships, believing that if you took the father out of the relationship and kept the vetting process out of the relationship and didn't lead to it leading to marriage, they thought they could create a new model in living together. But living together basically is one thing that's beneficial to all of the cads, womanizers, and whoremongers, because what they can do is go out here and put some pussy on layaway, and put the pussy on layaway where they're making a little installment, and as they're making installments payments on the pussy, what they're doing is getting laid and getting things out of the deal. Meanwhile, a lot of cases, the woman is getting a raw deal. And in some cases, when it comes to the dude, he's also looking to do this as a form of tricking, thinking that if he gets with this woman, eventually she'll see how good a dude he is and eventually believe he's worth marrying. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases with these deals, what it ends up is a raw deal, and it doesn't benefit either partner because both partners just aren't committed to each other to forsake all others and cleave to each other. Because according to the Bible, it states that when a man and a woman forsake the mother and father, they're supposed to cleave to each other, but nobody cleaves to each other when you have a living together situation. No, you have people pretending to cleave to each other, but they're not really committed in their hearts. And since they're not really committed in their hearts to each other, what happens is that their eyes are wandering, and as their eyes are wandering, what they're doing is committing adultery in their heart, as both partners are participating in hypergamy, really looking for a better deal. Sometimes the dude is looking for a more fit or younger or more attractive woman, and sometimes the woman is looking for a guy who's got a higher social status, but what they're doing is settling for each other. And as they're settling for each other, what they're doing is living together, hoping that somebody will offer them a deal. But in most cases, nobody winds up with a deal at all. And that's all because both partners basically copped out. And they copped out because they didn't want to commit in a marriage. And they didn't want to commit in a marriage mainly out of fear. And they didn't want to commit in that marriage because they were afraid of the partners not loving each other. And that's why living together is just as bad a deal as going out here and putting an item on layaway, because people put items on layaway when they ain't got the money and ain't got the discipline to be able to save the money, to be able to pay for the item. Because usually when a person has confidence and discipline, what they do is they're willing to go out here and have a resolve to persevere to save their money. And as they save their money and build themselves up, what they do is get enough money to be able to buy whatever they want. And they have that discipline to be able to do that without creating a deal with somebody else where they may or may not be committed. And in the case of layaway, you'll wind up paying more for an item than it's actually worth, because some of these stores do charge you a fee to keep that item on layaway. And if you don't pay for that item, you wind up losing your money. And even worse, you wind up losing your time. And that's why living together is a bad deal, as I see it, because you're losing your time. You're losing the most important intangible of all that you invest. You're investing time in this person, but the whole thing is you're not investing all of your heart. And because you're not investing all of your heart, what's happening is that you're winding up in a situation where nobody's really passionate for each other. You're pretending that you care, but you really don't. And you really don't want to be there. That's what happens in these cases with the layaway relationship. And again, layaway never really pays off at the end of the day. No, layaway relationships don't really pay off at the end of the day, because you're dealing with people who are depreciating over time, and they're looking at other people for and seeing better deals because the deal they got involved with was a raw deal. And that's why when you put a relationship on layaway, it never really pays off. So this was an observation I came to as I was writing Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. And I really, when I thought about that joke, it just made me laugh because, again, when you live with someone, it's not a good deal for either partner because you're not getting a full commitment from that person's heart. You're not getting a full commitment from that person because they really want to be there. No, when a man or a woman wants to really be in a relationship with someone, what they're going to do is go out here and make that proposal of marriage. And again, that man's gonna make that proposal of marriage because he sees this woman as the one that he wants and the one that he truly loves. And a man who truly loves a woman and respects a woman, that man is going to show respect to that woman by proposing marriage so that she will not be with anyone but him, because he loves that woman and he wants that woman to be his one. That's why he's going to make her a wife and give her the esteemed title that the Most High has given women as a wife. He's going to give her that title because he respects her as a woman. That's what a man is going to do. He's not going to look to be like, oh, let me see if I can put a payment on it, on a relationship. No, he's going to make a full commitment to it because he's going to have that discipline to say, look, I'm willing to go out here and be with this woman. I'm going to look to make this woman my wife. I'm going to make a commitment to that woman. He's not going to be like, oh, I want to live with that woman and just live with her. No, because that's just making your life an existence. And life is too short to be a part of an existence with someone who does not have the courage or commitment to stand by you. That's what, again, why you don't want to be in a layaway relationship, because you don't want to be sitting there wasting your time with someone who cannot go out here and make a full commitment. And the whole concept that came out of this whole thing of living together, again, this was what cowards do, because cowards are scared of commitment, and they're so scared that they'll sit there for years and even decades never saying, oh, this is my wife or this is my husband, because they don't respect that person. And anybody out here, as I see it, this is my opinion, should see anybody who proposes living together, that's a form of disrespect directed at you as a partner. Now, I know that there are some people who do work this out and eventually get married, but as I see it, when it comes to the whole concept of living together, again, this is what cowards did back in the 60s and the 70s. Now, a lot of the kids in the 80s, we grew up believing that this was supposed to be normal, but this is not normal at all. No, this is not the normal process for a relationship. No, the normal process is dating, getting to know each other, and he has his spot, you have your spot, and eventually he decides to be the head of that family by proposing marriage. And when he decides to propose marriage, what that does is it creates your own household, and that household comes together under the leadership of that man, under God's order. That's how it's supposed to be. But a lot of us didn't learn that because we grew up watching a lot of stuff on TV with Madison Avenue and Hollywood. We thought that living together was normal, but living together isn't normal. No, it's what weak people do when they want to put a relationship on layaway, and that's a deal that winds up being a raw deal for both that man and that woman. Now, I talk about living together in two of my books. One is why 70% of black women are single, as one of the reasons why black women are single. And I also talk about this in my book, The Woman Crisis, about why so many women just can't make a relationship work. And you can find both of those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. And you can find them on digital format on other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, and Target. And you can also find them in paperback at all of those other online booksellers, again, like Draft to Digital and the iBookstore. And you can, if you want to see me make more videos about this, like about relationships, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers, ISIS Dark Incubus. the goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Pre-order your copy of ISIS Dark Incubus at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere. Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, Illuminati. The man who rules the world takes on the head of the global elite in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati on Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.